Modeling overview. So we're going to go over just the main things we need to know about modeling and quickly get up to speed. First thing at the top, you have your menu items. Across the top here, some of these things will go into at a certain point, certainly not at the very beginning, but just recognize that you are in the modeling tab and you have your modeling items. If you ever come to your version or any version, you might have to check if you're not in modeling. You'll notice after Windows, if I go to something like animation, after Windows, you'll see mesh will disappear and there'll be something else there. And in that case, it would be key. And you can see that this menu items can change depending on what you have selected over here. By default, will be set at modeling, so you shouldn't run into this problem very often. Nice. Under the bottom here, you've got a common tasks, undos, saves, opens, componentry and object selection, snapping tos, symmetries, renderings. Underneath that, shelf items. Again, similar to the menu, there's a lot of different shelf items. By default, poly modeling is also open, so it's kind of assuming you're going to model when you first open up the application, which is kind of nice for us. So our common needs are already up and opening by default when we open the application. But you can click along on some of these and see what else is available there. But we'll be focused on the poly modeling. Couple other things, we'll move along on the left side. You have your select tools, your move, rotate, and scale tools. You have different types of viewports. So we're looking through a perspective. We have a 4 view. This is a perspective with a front view. This is what's called an outliner. And by default, we start the application in the perspective view. Moving along just the bottom, maybe we'll just come right down here. This is a timeline. So again, you're in a animation application that uses time, so there's going to be time involved. We're not using that with modeling, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. There's some command lines down at the bottom here. It gives you information. You can type stuff in. Play buttons that you might need when you're doing your animation, but we're modeling at the moment. Getting some layering type windows over here. And this is a big window here, which we're not seeing any information currently because we don't have an object created, but this is what's called the channel box. A lot of our work can be done in this window. Across the top here, we have some pretty big buttons again right here. Just we can open up tool settings. This is the attribute editor. We have the modeling toolkit. They have this toggle character thing. I don't want that on right now, so I'm not going to really bother with that. You can see they also tab along the side here, so they were already actually outed and you need to click on them. Sometimes they're not available though, so you want to know about those buttons as well. Stick with the channel box for now. So that's the basic layout of what we're looking at. There's more stuff, but since we're just focused on modeling, we're just going to get going on that. Next thing is just rotating around your view. So we're in perspective right now. Holding down the Option key, left mouse click, and rotate. So I'm just going to keep holding down the Option or Alt key. That's Option or Alt. Use the right click, mouse button, just kind of click and drag, and again that's side to side, not up and down. You'll find that up and down doesn't really work very well. It's better side to side. And then the middle mouse button is a move for the camera. Let's go ahead and look at the different views over here. So we'll go 4 view, and this is our common view. This is what will work a lot this way in the class. So 3 views here. We have top, front, and side, and then perspective. If you try to rotate in a orthographic view, it won't let you. You can only rotate in a perspective view. The zoom still works on all of them, just not rotate. Also, the move will work. So that always works. Notice also that each panel has its own menu. Okay, and so each panel separately can show things in different ways. We can have different attributes applied to these different windows in different ways. So there's a lot of customizability here, and you'll start to see at different times these windows will show in different ways for us, and we'll take advantage of that at different times. Let's go ahead and make an object. So I'm just going to click on the cube, create a cube that's sitting right in the center. And then I have my scale tool selected so you can see the handle for that. Let's go ahead and click on the arrow so that it's not on the scale tool. So just click on the arrow and nothing's selected, and it's a little easier to see that cube. So again, just notice if we hold our Option key again, we'll zoom in towards the cube, and if we left click, we can rotate around the cube. And if we try to rotate down the orthographic views, we can't, but we can zoom. We can move. And just notice that the different views are looking different now. So if I zoom in towards this one now, that was actually a scroll wheel. I didn't tell you about that one. We can also scroll wheel for zoom. Now, we can look at things, just for an example, we can look at things in wireframe. So if we look at our perspective view, there's different types of ways to view things. If I click on this, it'll be wireframe. And now this cube is see-through. But notice over here, it's not see-through, it's still solid. So I click back on this perspective view, it's back to solid. Let's turn this front view wireframe so now we can see through it. So sometimes we want to see through in these views, front and side, but we want it solid in this view. So that's common to want to try and have different looks, and that's one of the nice things about having different menus here for the different windows. Another thing to really be aware of is that we use the spacebar a lot to maximize different windows, because this is a really good view for us. We want these different three orthographics in the perspective. If I press or tap spacebar, so just where my cursor is, so my cursor is in the window. It doesn't have to be anything selected, just my cursor is over the perspective window. I'll tap my spacebar, tap, and that maximizes the perspective window. I'll tap again, I come out. I'm just tapping, so I can do that in my side view, front view. So I can tap in and tap out, and that's maximizing. Next thing we want to show you just real quickly is the difference between an object mode and a component mode. So when we're in object mode, I'll just go ahead and grab my move tool. Using the handles, just go ahead and click and move. I'll hit Z to undo. Notice when I move, the channel box shows a value, and there really are only three things I can do. I can move, I can rotate, and I can scale. And that's all I can do. I can't. It's never going to not be some form of a cube. Okay, so we had a crash, so I'm going to pick up where I left off. What I was talking about was the number of vertices and edges. So a nice way to work with the object mode, component mode, is to use the modeling toolkit. And inside of here, we have vertices, so we can select. Let me zoom in here. We can select vertices, and you can see again, I can select. We have edges, so I can select edges, and I have faces, so I can select faces. The back one here, this is UVs, and we'll talk about that later. But it's a different method of selecting. Other things that are nice in the modeling toolkit are the symmetry. You can model symmetrically. Soft selections are nice to work with, and then other tools down here to work with. But it's a great way to go about selecting, and a lot of people kind of gravitate towards this tool. It's a nice set of tools to work with. So this is nice, but also the channel box. So this is also used a lot. So you know you want to keep track of both of these in the beginning. Eventually the attribute editor will become a big part of your workflow, but right now stick with the channel box. So I've been getting a lot of crashing here, so I'm just going to go ahead and go for it and see if it crashes again. So this where it says inputs, there's this polycube 1. Ah, nice, no crash, so we can keep going. You'll see when we're making the character that we subdivide our cube to make the shape we're after. And I'm doing it here in the polycube 1 input. And this is the componentry of what makes up the cube. And that's kind of the difference between the object and the component. So these numbers are pretty specific. This is 3, use tab, 6, tab, and then 3. So tab moves you through the windows really nicely. And then always I'll hit return at the end, and that you can see that the object now has more lines on it, you could say. Divisions really are not the lines, they're actually the spaces between the lines. But let's take a look at the modeling toolkit. Again, now when we do selections, you can see with vertices, there's just a really lot more vertices to work with. So what I'm doing here is another distinction to make when we're modeling is called marquee selecting. So marquee selecting is when we click and drag a box over a portion of vertices. It can be edges as well, or faces for that matter. Anything within that box is selected, and will then, if we use our move tool for instance, just those will move. Okay, it's kind of random movement. This is called a marquee selection. And it's a really important distinction. We can also do what's called a direct select. When we direct select, we're only clicking on a vertex. And what that ensures is that we get one vertex only. What you'll notice is that if you do a marquee selection, anything inside of this rectangle I'm making here will be selected. So most likely something in the back here is also selected, as you can see. That's really different than if I do a direct select. You can see it just only selects at one vertex. And so when we're modeling, we're being conscious about whether or not we're doing a direct selection to get multiple vertices, or if we're doing a rather marquee selection to get multiple vertices, or a vertex selection, just one selection. So we call that a direct select when we do one. Okay, so that's selecting using those things. So again, coming out with the what we're going to do, the first move, just to see the marquee selection in practice, would be to selecting the corners in the top view. So I'll maximize that view. I'm going to just do a marquee selection over one corner, and then I'm going to hold shift and do marquee selections over all the rest of the corners. And I'll come back out so you can see the move and what it looks like in perspective. You can see that really it looked like selecting only 4 vertices from the top, but really it was actually 24 total. Use the scale tool. The scale tool has some qualities in terms of, you know, just how the handles work, and probably should talk about the handles in this video as well. So let's do that in a moment. So just notice that we can do one direction or the other, kind of like this. You can undo Z, Z. Or when we have these kinds of, these sorts of buttons are actually going to control both sides here. We'll get a good symmetrical scaling. This creates a cylinder, and this is a really good shape to make a character with. Um, Talking about the handles here, we'll get used to hopefully the X, Y, Z designators. Um, if you look real closely, you can see in the windows that there are X, Y, Zs. Right now, what I would really focus on is just the direction you want something to go, and try to always use a handle if you can. And just really be careful to always use a handle. So the scale tools handle, let's maximize this view here. So what the move handle looks like, and again, when you select a portion of a handle, pay attention to how it turns yellow once it's selected. But the default color for these is RGB, red, green, and blue, and those always will refer to X, Y, and Z. But really not having to worry about these designators is important. Just try to recognize it. If you were looking at this and you wanted all these vertices to go this way, just look for the proper arrow that's going in the direction you want something to go, and then just make that move in the direction that you want it to go. It sounds kind of vague, but that's probably the best thing to think about in the beginning. But really always try to focus on using your handles. And then notice also how when you're in, say, a side view, just notice that I can't move these vertices in the X direction. So if I try to move these, just notice that they never really will move in this direction no matter what I do. So just notice that they can go backwards or they can go up. But I can't, no matter what I do, go sideways. I can't go sideways in this view because I'm moving in this view. And so the side view only has two directions, which is a really advantageous way of modeling. We take advantage of this all over. So when you start building a torso, you'll see that we work in the side view, the front view, the side view, the front view. We do that a lot. It's really useful for the orthographic views. So those are some basic steps to get you going on the modeling process. Next step is to move into the torso video and start on the torso, and then the leg, the arm, the head, and finishing out the basic model. So see you on that one.